Hello Internet, welcome back to Daily Codes. Yesterday we set up the project of data engineering that will help us to scrape data from two websites and load that data into a Postgres database. Today we are going to set up Airflow to ensure that the Airflow can be able to run and be ready to receive the DAGs and the tasks for the DAGs. So by the end of this video, we should be able to run Airflow scheduler and Airflow web server, and we should be able to also add a user, an admin user into this Airflow server that we are going to create. Then we will see the output later. This is a bigger project that I worked on, and I've broken it down into several pieces of videos, and each video should be independent on its own. If you don't want to watch any other video and you just want to see setting up of Airflow, this video will cover everything that you will need to know to set up Airflow to work with the Postgres database. But if you want to follow along the whole project, this is kind of the second video in coding and setting up. There's a previous video yesterday where we set up all the folders that we'll need for this project. And there is another video that is before that where I showed you the whole project and what is expected about the project. So today, let's do Airflow. So the first thing we are going to do is to determine where the metadata of Airflow will lie, either in SQL Alchemy, either in SQLite database, which is a portable database you can have in your project folder, or in database management system that is bigger and more robust like Postgres. And mostly we are advised to have Postgres saving its metadata in a robust database management system like Postgres or MySQL or Oracle and so forth. So now we are going to go to Postgres. Ensure that you have Postgres installed in your system. Installation of Postgres and pgadmin is out of the scope of this, so you try to find out how to install Postgres on your computer, whether using Mac or Linux or Windows. And then I am using this UI called pgadmin4. You can also find out how to install it into your system, then you can follow along. Let me increase the size of this so that you can see. So I'm going to create a database, and I'm just right clicking here into pgadmin, and let's say create database. Then I'm going to call this database web data. Then I suffix it with YouTube so that I know that this was a database I created for a YouTube tutorial. Then I'm going to click save. So it will utilize all default settings for a Postgres database for your local system. Now, as we have created this database, we are going to create a user an Airflow user who will be using this database, or we can use the Postgres user, but it's advisable that you have Airflow user. So I'm going to open the query tool. I just right clicked on the tables and selected the query tool. Then I'm going to write a query here. So I'm going to create a user. So I'm going to create a user, and this user is going to be called Airflow YouTube user. YouTube user. this user will have a password. So we're going to say create user Airflow YouTube user with password. With password, I want to use the same password for the video purposes, but if you're doing this in production, then you should have a randomized password with as many characters as you want to confuse people who want to hack you. So I'm going to create this user. Then I'm going to write another piece of query to give privileges to this user. So I'm going to say grant all privileges. Grant all privileges on this database that you've created on database. And the name of the database is here that we created, web data. So web data YouTube. So on database, web data YouTube. And then we are granting all privileges on this database to that user, to Airflow YouTube user. So I'm copying it and I paste it here. I want to confirm the name of this database, so I'm going to try to make this bigger. How will I? Okay, let me reduce the size of this. Then I scroll up. So I have web data YouTube, web data YouTube separated by underscore. So let me run both of these queries. Run. So privileges does not have double L. So the first one ran successfully, so it only has this. So I'm going to select this second one. Then I run. Grant all privileges. What's happening? Syntax error here. Privileges. I think there is something wrong I'm doing. Let me type privileges again, but now I'm going to use uppercase. privileges. Privileges. Okay. I think I typed it wrongly. So Airflow YouTube user does not exist. Let's create the user since this one never ran. So the role is created here. You can see create role. Then let's run this again. Okay, the grant is successful. So I'm going to link you the link to this code here. It is part of the scripts in the repo. So you'll find the link in the description below. If in case you want to just copy and paste, but it is the same thing. You can just write create user, then the username with password, then the password, then grant all privileges on the database name to the user, the username you have created. So now we have created this. We now need to connect Airflow with this user to use this database. As you can see, in this database on the public schema, we don't have any table. So we are going to connect it and then we're going to initialize the database, initialize Airflow to use the database. And then you will see the metadata tables created here. So let's go back to terminal. So in the terminal here, yesterday we created a virtual environment for this, but you can work on your system if you don't want to work on a virtual environment. But we're going to use the virtual environment with the Airflow version that we created yesterday. So source VM bin activate. So if you're using Windows, then this will be a totally different command. Then after that, before this, we need to first of all set up a config for Airflow so that Airflow can connect to this when we initialize it. So let's go back to the project. Remember the Airflow folder we created yesterday, and then we did Airflow version, and it brought all this here. Let me make it bigger for you to see. So yesterday we created the virtual environment, then we did Airflow version, and we exported the two variables, that was Airflow home and the Python path, to make sure that it's pointed towards this folder here. And then we did Airflow version, and it created all this for us. So now we are going to be working with this file here. It's called Airflow CFG. So CFG is like config, short of config, I assume. Then inside here, we are going to look for we're going to look for a variable called, I think, SQL Alchemy connection. So I'm going to just find Control F, then I type SQL Alchemy connection here. So this SQL Alchemy connection is the one that we are going to change to use Postgres. So originally the configuration is so that the metadata for Airflow is stored in SQLite, and the path to that database is our Airflow home path, and then inside our Airflow home is where the DB is created. So we are not going to use this path here, so I'm going to either remove it by just deleting it or commenting. I prefer commenting it out. Then down here, I am going to copy this, paste it. Oh no, pasted it twice. Then I'm going to type Postgres. So it is postgresql. And we are also using psychopg2, which was also installed in the requirements when we were creating the virtual environment yesterday. So in that previous video, every time I say yesterday, I am meaning the previous video because I recorded it yesterday. And the link to the previous video is in the description or in the card above this. I would recommend you look at it and see how we created the environment and how we installed everything. Yeah, but let's change this. I assume that you know how to do that. So after doing this, we're going to say PostgreSQL. It's just like a URL. Then we're going to put the user. The user we have created here is Airflow YouTube user. So I will copy that and I paste it here. Then we, after that, we're going to put the password, but separated by colon. So user colon password. The password we also give is the same as the user here. Please don't make this mistake when you're pushing your code to production. Make sure your password is something very random. Then after that, so user password at, looks like an email. So my database, the host of my database is the local host because it is on my computer, but you may have a Postgres database hosted in the cloud. So you'll put the IP address of the host or the URL, HTTPS, blah, 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 blah. So mine is the local host. So I'll just type local host. Or I could type 127.0.0.1, but that, so local host, and then the name / name of the database. The name of the database is here, web data YouTube, that we have just created. So this is the only change that you will have to make onto the Airflow config file inside Airflow Home. Inside Airflow Home, Airflow Home is the folder that contains the Airflow thing. This is the only change that you need to make. There are other changes. For example, if you want to use a different schema, then you would change a certain variable here. Here, SQL Alchemy schema. This is SQL Alchemy support databases with the concept of multiple schemas. So if you want to use something that is separate from the public schema, then you use that. But as you know, what you should know is that the user always points to the user of Airflow with Postgres always points to the public schema. So there are some changes you need to make. You'll have to read the documentation and make those changes. But for in this case, we want the metadata to be in the public schema. The reason is that if we create other schemas, they should be for the data for the API. So this is the change that we have to make. Then we are going to save. Then after that, we'll go back to our terminal. Then we are going to check if we have the other two variables that we set yesterday. So I will do echo. It is just bash. Then the variable here is Airflow home, and it has returned nothing. That is because whenever we do an export of a variable, it is only kept in that terminal session. If you close that terminal, that variable also disappears. And I don't want to put that variable in .bash rc because it is for a simple project that will be later stopped, or I will stop continuing working on this project maybe after a month or so. So I don't want it to be permanent on my system. So I'm okay with exporting it every time I need to use it. So export Airflow home. Airflow home should be equal to print working directory. So the directory that we are in, but the directory that we are in is this one. We want Airflow home to be the Airflow directory, which the Airflow directory is inside this. So we're going to put a / after printing working directory. Then we put Airflow. So enter. If we try to echo that variable again, we get the result here that this is the path to Airflow home. Then we also need to export Python path because we have a local Python. Let me do ls -a. We have a local Python package here, Python 3.10.0. I have several Python versions installed in my system, and I'm using pym. Please look at the previous video and see how I set up Python to be on a local folder. So we are going to export Python path to be in this directory that we are working in. So pwd. So also if we do echo $p Python path, we get this link. please take note of the difference between this and this. Python path has no underscore separating Python path. Airflow home has underscore separating Airflow and home. So now we are ready to connect our Airflow with the database and initialize Airflow the database with one command. So we are going to do, that command is airflow db init. So airflow 2, we're using 2.4. So airflow 2 uses this airflow db init. Airflow 1 was using airflow init db. Init and db was separated by underscore. So when we do this, it's going to create all the tables for metadata. So let's do enter. Make sure before you run airflow db init, you have airflow home pointing towards where your config file is located, because it is going to look for this and then decide to use this database. If you don't do that, then it will use SQL Alchemy. I mean SQLite. Why am I confusing SQL Alchemy and SQLite? It will use SQLite and it will create it in your home folder in your system, in your home root directory in your system. So you need to be careful as you're doing this. So let me run this. And hopefully it has some warnings. One of these warnings is because I am using Python 3.10, which Airflow at this juncture is not yet tested on Python 3.10. But since it worked for me with Airflow version 2.4, then it is just fine. I'm okay with the warnings. So the initialization is done with lots and lots of warnings. And one of the warnings is that I'm using an old settings. So warnings don't hurt us until they become errors. So let's look at the database. And let me refresh this schema, public schema. I'm going to just right click it and I click refresh. Then let's look at the table. So you can see that these tables here, there are several tables that are created here. There is this table, this table, this table, this table. There is role, there is DAG, there job, there is log table, and so forth. So Airflow is initialized. Now the next thing we are going to do is to create user. So we're going to create, Airflow create, Airflow create users. Then the first flag is minus minus user name, and the username, I'm going to call it Dalmas. Then first name, that's the second flag. First name, I'm going to call it Dali. And then last name, I'm going to call codes. Then the role is very important, is admin with capital A. Then email, I'm going to say dalmas at dalicodes.com. Then the password, please select something random. The password I'm going to use here will be Dalmas password, then enter. So it's going to create something that I did wrong. saying invalid choice create. It's supposed to be Airflow users create, not Airflow create users. Let me just update that. At least I am updating it without looking at Stack Overflow for the error. So you should subscribe for that. Airflow users create. Please subscribe because I'm not using Stack Overflow. Well, I used Stack Overflow a lot when I was researching about this. So it's very important for a programmer. So run this. Yeah, it's running. It's creating in the user, Dalmas. Yeah, Dalmas is created with role admin. So now we are free to run Airflow scheduler. So Airflow scheduler is the server that helps in scheduling tasks, keeping jobs, remembering when to run tasks, yeah, and the dependencies of tasks. And it is the one that is also used to load the DAGs into the system for Airflow to see that the DAGs are running. So we are going to run Airflow scheduler in this terminal, but I'm also going to open a new terminal, a new shell. Problem with my system is it launches Anaconda every time on my system, so I'm going to just deactivate. So I'm saying conda deactivate. I clear that. So I'm in my folder data eng project. So I'm going to activate the virtual environment. We have been activate. Then we are going to export. Remember, every time you launch a terminal, the other variables don't exist. So we're going to export the two variables, which I'm okay to do every time. So I'm going to export airflow underscore home equals to the working directory. Please don't forget these backticks. This backticks means that whatever is inside here is a bash command, needs to be run. The output is the one that will be assigned there. So slash airflow. Then I'm going to export Python path. Export Python path being equal to this directory. So in the first terminal, I'm going to run airflow scheduler. So I'm going to type this airflow scheduler, and I run it. So they are running. Yeah, it is giving us a lot of warnings, but we only care about errors for now. Then we are going to run airflow web server in the next terminal. Remember, I have not closed this. I have left this server to run for airflow scheduler. Then I'm going to run airflow web server here. Gives me all these millions of warnings. Then it will tell me that it is running. It already told me somewhere here. If you don't have warnings, you'll just see it running into this link. So I'm going to copy this link. This link here, Gunicorn server is running with that. Then I'm going to, I don't have a browser running. Let me launch this. Sorry for my football. Then I'll paste it here. Yeah, so we can see, let me just make this bigger. We can see that the that Airflow is running, and it is telling us to log in. So I'm going to type in Dalmas. Remember the password? The password was Dalmas password. It was the password for Airflow that we created when we were creating the admin user on the terminal. So sign in, and we are here. It is telling us do not use sequential executor production. So currently we're using sequential executor because we are not on production. So it's giving us a warning. And this interface, we already have example DAGs inside here. So there are lots of directed acyclic graphs inside here. So now we know that Airflow is running, and we have set it up. When we want to work with Airflow, you don't want to look at these example DAGs because these ones are just for tutorials when you're learning Airflow. So we are going to go back to Airflow config file and remove this. And there is one variable here in Airflow config in Airflow home that is used to do that, and it's called load examples. So I'm going to kill the other processes that are running here in this terminal. I'm going to kill Airflow web server, Control C. Then I'm also going to kill Airflow scheduler, Control C. Yeah, so let's go to our config file. Where is it? It is here. Then we find there is Control F or Command F, and then we're going to look for load example. So here it is saying loading examples equals to true. We're going to change that to load examples equals to false. Then you save. Then after saving, we are going to run again Airflow scheduler. The reason why I stopped it is because if I just changed it, Airflow scheduler would take long before it realizes it. So I just stop it and restart it. I've also restarted Airflow web server. So I'm going to just refresh here, and we shall be able to see that there will be no DAGs. So let's wait. Is this one taking long? Yeah, we can see that there are no DAGs now. They are not DAGs. The reason why they are not DAGs is because we have not created any DAG here. Under Airflow, inside Airflow home, we are supposed to have a folder for DAGs. So I'm going to create that folder called DAGs. And in the config file here, if you look at on top, we know DAG folder is here, and it is pointed inside Airflow DAGs. That's why I've created DAGs. In case I wanted my DAGs to be somewhere else, I would change this path and make sure that Airflow has the rights to read and write into that path. The same as logs. The logs will be having their path somewhere here. This is base log folder. This is the path where the logs will be. So you can see the logs here. This is one of the logs, and it is this path here. You see Airflow, then logs here. So far we have set up Airflow, and we have added a user into Airflow. Please try to do this on your own and see if you will be able to launch Airflow in your system. You can be pausing the video and looking at it again until you get it right. I am very sorry for people who are using Windows. I don't have a Windows machine, but I would have shown you how to do it on Windows. But for Mac and for Linux, it is the same process. I hope also for Windows will be the same process. So tomorrow we are going to be looking at fetching data from websites using Python, and hopefully we can also scrap the data that we fetch and put it in Airflow in a short period of time. But if it's not, then we can do that in 2 videos. So until next time, make sure what you've learned today, you share it with other people. You can share this video. You can also just teach other people what you've learned. If you're at work, you can show them. If you're at school, you can also just show your friends that I've learned this thing called Airflow, how to set it up. Come and I show you, and through teaching, you master your skill. So until tomorrow, bye.